You are listening to New Theory Radio. Theory Radio.
You're here on the inaugural, or what we're going to call episode 0 of New Theory Radio live at CFRE 91.9 at the campus of UTM. And my name is Nav Nanwa. I'm your host. Very excited to bring this concept to life here in this inaugural episode where we theorize on everything that's currently going on, whether it's current affairs, whether it's pop culture, or whether it's just everyday life, because there's theories on everything here on New Theory Radio. And I'm very excited to welcome my guests who are going to help me discuss some 3 topics of interest. And I got to introduce the person on my left here in the studio. He's an individual that I've worked with plenty during my time at Rogers TV. He was the one that was always speaking or yelling in my ear, depending on how good or how bad I was doing. But he's one of my homies, and I'm very excited to bring him here. He's currently killing it in the media world, continually to kill it. And I wanted to welcome Wasim Parkar here to New Theory Radio. Wasim, how's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be here on your new project. You know, your 57th new project in the last 3 years.
Hopefully this one sticks.
Yeah. but I am excited, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. And then I got to welcome to my right an individual who I don't think a lot of people know this, was a previous candidate in the 2014
barely
Brampton election for city council. Was it wards? Was it 1 and 5?
2
and 5.
2 and 6.
2 and 6.
Yeah,
2 and
no,
6.
I was barely a candidate.
Yeah. And then, and he's also a digital entrepreneur, and he's also has a new podcast affiliated with the Bramptonist.com with Nikita Brown, and that is Sushil Tailor. Sushil, thank you so much for joining us here on the episode 0 of New Theory Radio.
Thank you for making me episode 0 material.
Hey, man.
You know?
When I was thinking about episode 0 and who to bring on this inaugural episode, I was like, why not reach out to Wasim and Sushil? Because I know, if anything, if I don't provide a lot of value here, you guys definitely will. And if for anything, I might not even be involved in some of these conversations, knowing how long you guys like talking to each other. So,
yeah.
Well,
you're the looks, we're the brains, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm just the mediator of all the knowledge that's currently coming at me. But guys, the theory of this show, or just the premise of this show, is really to theorize on all things pop culture, current affairs, and just general life happenings. And I want to start with a bit of a micro level and look at some of the things that are affecting us here within the Peel region, and that's specifically a interesting book that will be coming out this week, courtesy of the Brampton Mayor-elect and former Ontario Progressive Conservative leader Patrick Brown. He is releasing his book called "Take Down: The Attempted Political Assassination of Patrick Brown," which is his memoir, this Friday, which is tomorrow. And I just want to, first and foremost, just do a little roundtable on what's your theory on this book and the impact it could potentially have as he enters the Brampton mayoral office next month. And Wasim, we'll begin with you.
Well, it's interesting. I think, first of all, it's kind of tough, in fairness, and no disrespect to the name of the show. It's kind of difficult to theorize about something that hasn't released yet at the time of this recording.
But maybe from a PR standpoint.
Right, I understand, yeah. I was just trying to talk about the fact that one of my biggest gripes in today's world is that the mainstream media in so many different countries, not only in Canada and the States, all over the world, makes a lot of sweeping judgments without having the right information in front of them. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people haven't even read this book and yet have very strong opinions on it. Now, I should lay my cards on the table. I am by no means a fan of Patrick Brown. I find him to be an extremely opportunistic political figure, for lack of a better term. And to me, it's no surprise from the excerpts that I've read in the Toronto Star. I think if I'm not mistaken, Sushil, the Star are the only ones that have the advanced copy
Yeah.
of the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are.
So from the excerpts that I read on the Star, I'm not surprised by the narrative that this book has. I'm not surprised that Patrick Brown has used this book as basically a vehicle to attack the party that so discredited him. Whether that speaks well about the party, I'm not so sure. Whether that speaks well about Patrick Brown, I'm not so sure. But my initial thoughts, the boring thought for now is I'm just going to wait and see. I don't think I'll buy the book, but maybe I'll try and read a chapter here and there before having stronger opinions. But I'm sure we'll get into it more.
Totally.
But those are my opening thoughts.
Yeah, it's Sushil. We were talking about this bit off air, but knowing that Patrick Brown will be taking office the first week of December in the city of Brampton, if you're working on Patrick Brown's team currently and you knew this book was on the horizon and was going to come out, what would you be telling sort of Patrick Brown and his team regarding, sort of the decision to release this book, even though, right now he's ready to take the reins of being the focal point of the city of Brampton for the next 4 years?
Don't release the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a day to pull the book. I don't know, something. At the end of the day, the province usually provides 1/3 of funding for most capital projects that occur in Brampton, right? If that's the case, I don't think we should be spiting the province, especially when they're, especially since that they're, kind of closing the purse strings on the purse, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's the key problem we have here. We're not going to get funding, and we've been told that the Huron-Ontario LRT might be up in the air. We're probably not going to get funding for the Riverwalk, which is necessary. It's a necessary component of developing downtown Brampton to allow it to bring more density, because the Riverwalk allows you to deal with future floods.
Yeah.
Right. And without that, you can't bring density, because if there's ever a flood, you're going to have, a lot of underground parking that's just going to become, water.
Yeah,
just like
totally.
an underground lake, right? So that's a problem. And Brampton, it's going to be difficult for us to grow without funding, from a key partner. And so we shouldn't be, nuking that bridge.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting is, the day after Patrick Brown gets elected, Brampton magically loses all of its university funding. So, right then and there, you're starting to see a lot of interesting moves that are being made.
You start noticing that a lot of announcements are made specifically to spite Patrick Brown, right? Specifically, the announcement to get rid of the regional chair race in Peel.
Yeah. The
announcements, they could have announced information regarding pulling university funding before Brown got elected.
Yeah.
If it was in the cards, it was in the cards, but they didn't. They waited the day after, right? So it's clear that there's, the policy lens behind the current Ontario PCs, spite is included.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like they'll look at a piece of policy and they'll be like, okay, well, how can we from a spite perspective, from vengeance, how can we propose a policy?
Yeah, and Wasim, you touched on earlier some of the excerpts that you've read about the book, and some of the things that are coming out that are making quite the headlines today. When he talks about his former colleague Lisa McLeod, he claims that she was faking her mental illness and just to get attention. Vic Fideli, who is someone who recently. Did I get the name wrong?
No, it's right.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just laughing at the absurdity of many of these figures and the way they're reacting.
Well, we're going to keep
the contradictions that are so
for sure.
that are there not only in Patrick Brown but even amongst the elected members of cabinet who are ruling our province.
And Fideli's an interesting one, considering the interactions he's had with the Brampton MPP. Flat out calling MPP Sarah Singh an idiot after he was explaining the way trying to explain the way that the Ontario Cannabis Store is operating with a third party. But now it's coming out, and the NDP now as the opposition is telling Premier Doug Ford to launch a private investigation on Fideli and potentially the Conservative government paying off a supposed victim of sexual harassment. that it was perpetrated potentially by Fidelity. So a can of worms for sure that's being unraveled.
Yeah.
But then, Wasim, my question to you is, specifically with your background in political science and just your experience sort of working with politicians at Rogers TV, is how much harm does this do in the grand scheme of things? And what's your theory on the role that Brampton, the city, is going to play as as these issues continue to boil up and Patrick Brown finds himself, trying to be an adversary to the PC government, which is in charge of Ontario currently?
Wow, that's quite a cerebral question. This is already heavier than I'd anticipated.
Hey, I know you can handle heavy.
No, fair enough. I guess, there are going to be a lot of ramifications. I don't know, Sushil, maybe you can jump in here. A part of me also feels how much of this is a bit of a charade,
Yeah.
That old maxim, any publicity is good publicity. At the end of the day, do we really think that the Conservatives are as divided as Patrick Brown's book makes it look like? I'm not 100% sold on it because, after all, and I won't hesitate in saying this again, from my vantage, I look at Patrick Brown's political progression and I see an opportunist, right? So I think as much as a storm this book is going to create, there's no guarantee a month later it's still going to be relevant. So many things might have happened. One thing I'm interested in getting both your perspectives is in, since we are, of course, here to theoreticize things, is that let's see more details of this book come out, people actually read the book, more in-depth conversations are had. To me, it seems quite clear, and maybe I'm opening up some fresh wounds over here. To me, it seems quite clear that even after he lost the chance to lead the PCs in this election, he had a lot of second choices, third choices, fourth choices before wanting to become the mayor of Brampton. Is that going to open up a can of worms again in the city of Brampton? And are people going to realize that, hey, we voted for a change, but maybe we didn't think through this well enough?
So, speaking of the point of unity, right? There's always disunity in the party. Right, like if you go behind the covers, behind the veil that's shown to the media, you're gonna have people that don't like each other, that disagree with each other. But when push comes to shove, when you're governing, you have to show a united front. When you're in opposition, you got to show a united front, right? And you can't you can't show disunity. And so what Patrick Brown is actually doing is that in saying that there is dysfunction in the party, he's ironically galvanizing the entire PC party against him, right? so in showing that there is disunity, he has given them a point of unity, right? He's also recently come out to say that in from the same excerpts of the book, he's mentioned that Brian Mulroney tried to come to him in order to make a deal regarding his daughter, right? So boom, that's another one, right? That's another person with whom he's burning a bridge. And
to that point, at the end of the day, a lot of what Brown's platform in Brampton was about being a strong advocate to really make things happen for the city. A lot of those decisions are, obviously, him being an advocate to the Ontario government to, get increased funding, to get some of the services. If he's creating a rift with the party that has the majority in the House, how much of impact can he make in the next 4 years? That's something I'm curious about.
I'm not seeing a lot. I'm not seeing a lot of impact in the next 4 years. I'm seeing a lot of infighting. I wouldn't say infighting. I would just see just this Brampton serving as a drama for Tory infighting, right? For Tory drama. And that's what we've essentially voted in, based on, the past provincial election and current, the latest municipal election. This is going to continue. We're not going to get funding. We already are being told that there's a $15 billion deficit. Maybe, a lot of those expenses seem to be concentrated in Brampton, so they got to cut down. Right? So that's the way I see it playing out. We've seen time and time again that Doug Ford makes decisions based off of spite. And, I don't see that, stopping, especially now that Patrick Brown has essentially lobbed napalm all over his old party. We're not going to see anything good for Brampton. At best, we can hope that city councilors can work with MPPs to try to get funding. And then for any sort of funding that does occur, Patrick Brown won't be invited at the cutting of the red tape ceremony.
Now, to play devil's advocate, because
yeah.
I'm sensing that we all three have this sort of similar political bent, right? To play devil's advocate, would you say politically the best time for this nonsense to happen, both for Doug Ford and Patrick Brown, is in the first year? You know, it would be more damaging
if it was in the final
halfway
year,
or, you know, a year away from the election, or God forbid, even an election year. Is this the year where they can do stuff like this? And politically, as much as I don't advocate it, politically, it's actually a free pass. Is there an argument for that?
It seems like a bad idea because election season hasn't come yet.
Right.
So, I mean...
so is this a good time to air your dirty laundry because it is an election season?
You know, I think yes and no. I think that there's, you know, if I'm you know, Patrick Brown, I'm thinking, okay, I have 4 years to make this better, or to at least, you know, if I want to get reelected and stay mayor of Brampton, then I really need to, you know, really work on my relationships. But with that said, this book doesn't help that. So it's I almost look at this as being, you know, a really bad wound. That's gonna probably take a while to heal.
Okay, I mean, I'm really gonna play devil's advocate here, in the true sense of the term, in terms of, you know, right? I mean, if we want to, if Patrick Brown considered himself the true Machiavelli, right, he would have saved a lot of the incriminating stuff that he put in his book, a lot of those excerpts, because you can then go to the Ontario government, you can then personally go to ministers and say, hey, you know, Brampton needs money, and you don't want this to go out, right? You don't want this piece of news to surface anywhere, right? So come on, we can work together, right? I mean, there's that sort of implicit, at that point, there will be that implicit understanding that, hey, you know, if Vic Fideli doesn't, you know, put a line item for Brampton, then Vic Fideli, you know, has to deal with allegations of sexual assault, right? Like, this is very evil stuff, but it gets Brampton the goods.
It does,
right?
It does,
And that's the way. I mean, if he was the true Machiavelli, if he kind of understood real politics, I would say that would be the way to go.
You know, just to close off this first segment of New Theory Radio, you know, just change gears a little bit. And this is something I just want to get opinions on. You know, Linda Jeffrey, the current mayor for the next couple of weeks, you know, did put out a letter last week kind of talking about, you know, she's going to sort of fulfill her last obligations as mayor, and she doesn't know what's next. And, you know, she was in attendance to the Brampton Remembrance Day ceremony on Sunday. Or yes, it was Saturday. Sunday, yes. So just I'm curious, you know, now that we know that you know they're going to have to decide who regional chair is going to be, and you know, also looking at the fact that there's a federal election on the way. Do you see Linda playing any roles in either, or do you think this is the end of sort of Linda Jeffrey from a political career standpoint? And Wasim, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, I always made a promise myself, if I ever became famous and was invited as a guest on shows, I'll never be one of those who speaks for the sake of speaking. So in that spirit, I'm actually going to defer to Sushil on this. Because in fairness, I don't, at this moment in my life, you know, when I was working professionally, Brampton had a big impact in my life, but I've sort of been cut off a little bit, so I'll defer to
You're
his.
Officially a Mississaugan. And things are going great in Mississauga, so we can't complain.
This is not to say that I don't want to be connected to what's happening in Brampton, but I'll defer to Sushil on this one.
Wasim just hates Brampton.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Look, on my end, I'm not going to extrapolate, right?
Yeah.
I think from the outset, you know, Linda has had a very successful political career.
Totally, yeah.
Right? And you could say, like, this is the first election that she's lost. Maybe she'll...
All three levels of government, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh, if I recall correctly, all three levels of government.
I believe so,
right?
Yeah.
She's
like a political all-star.
She's a local powerhouse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think that her influence is going away, but I don't know whether she'll be, you know, coming back as regional chair. You know, personally, I would see... you know, time off of work as time to, you know, settle down and chill.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. Why not?
You know, and if she's been nonstop in the political realm, I'd say that's the best way to ease tensions and live a stress-free life.
I do feel, speaking straight from the heart over here, not necessarily analytically.
Yeah.
I was heartbroken on election day when I heard her speak after the results came out. I was heartbroken because to me that speech was of an elected official who gave her heart and soul to her job, worked with full commitment, and with a lot of nasty opposition. And I'm sorry, I'm not sugarcoating this. A lot of nasty opposition in Brampton Council.
True. Yeah.
That is the reality of Brampton Council.
Yeah.
And I think she put her heart and soul, and she delivered a lot of things. And, I actually... No, I'm not pulling any punches. I was kind of devastated hearing her speak after the results came out because, to me, it really struck a chord. And
yeah, totally.
I think I agree with Sushil. Take some time, rest and stuff. But I still, in my heart, believe she's got a lot to give.
Guys, I want to talk to you about Amazon HQ2. It was announced this week that they're going to officially be moving or putting HQ2 in both New York City as well as Arlington, Virginia, which is close to Washington, D.C. What that means to us is that the GTA bid that was led by the City of Toronto did not receive HQ2, and I've been hearing a lot of mixed things about this decision here locally. Some people have said it's even an honor for Toronto to even been considered in the top 20 when it came to HQ2, while some people look at it as being quite the failure on our end on not doing everything in our power to really bring a giant like Amazon here to the country. So just want to get some thoughts. And Sushil, I guess we'll start with you. So were you surprised with the fact that we never got HQ2?
No, I was not surprised. We didn't kiss Jeff Bezos' ring enough. Right? like he said he wanted like $2 billion worth of tax breaks and whatnot, and I'm assuming DC and New York cumulatively have offered that. But it was no surprise where it went. It would have only gone to a city. It would have only gone to like the DC area, New York, and maybe even Toronto, because at the end of the day, what's required is tech talent. Right? Yeah. You need technology talent that's already there. And not only is it already there, but you don't have to move people in as much. Right? You don't have to put in that extra money to do that. You don't have to sign a lot of H-1B visas and whatnot. And another thing is, from what I've been told, is the theory I have is the reason why you want to be close to DC is because of the president that doesn't like you. Right? And so
we all know how the relationship between Trump and Bezos now.
It's clear that, I mean, if you have a lot of tech workers, they work at Amazon, they work near DC, that's some natural lobbying happening, right? Yeah. And if they try to regulate, and the Republicans and Trump in particular, they've been talking about trust busting of large tech companies. So I guess they want to keep the pulse on the ground.
Interesting. Wasim, obviously this was something that both, not only the City of Toronto, but, Brampton, Mississauga also got involved in as well. And they looked at this as being an opportunity to, bring a multinational, not only to the country of Canada, but to Ontario, and to really drive a lot of foreign investment into these cities. You being someone that's very close to the political world when it comes to your interests and just what what you studied in school, what is your thoughts on us losing out on this? And do you feel like this will now make us, even though we were considered, that it will make us more attractive to other potential multinationals that might want to, consider moving an entire operation to our area?
I guess for starters, I don't necessarily associate a sense of loss to this. Equally, I don't necessarily think it was quote unquote an honor as such to be on the list. We were under consideration. Ultimately, Amazon made a pragmatic decision. I can't really differ from what Sushil said. I think a lot of stuff that he said just made the most obvious sense economically. It made the most obvious sense sociopolitically. So in my mind, at least, and I think in most discerning people's minds, most of us knew well before the decision was made that it was going to end up being an American city. Maybe I didn't necessarily pinpoint Arlington. I thought New York was definitely a contender, but I always knew at the back of my mind, and I was prepared that it would be an American American location. I think, it's interesting. In the prep notes that you sent us for today's discussion, I read one of the articles you sent, and I thought one of the speakers or one of the experts in one of those articles said something really interesting. And Sushil, as someone who loves tech, I'd love to get your take on this as well. And he said, really, the key to establishing a thriving tech economy is for us to have our own, not necessarily versions, quote unquote, of Amazon, but our own companies growing over here. Mm-hmm. What's your take on that?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that requires, in my opinion, just talent and creating a city and creating a region that attracts talent and makes it so that talent wants to live here. That's how we can grow these companies, because if they get laid off from RIM, for example, they get laid off from Shopify, them and their alumni, they work together to build a new business, right? Canada lacks a lot of the infrastructure that the U.S. has. We have more stringent financing laws. I think it was only very recently you weren't able to actually have a Kickstarter legally in Canada, and there's a lot of issues related to the level of risk that venture capitalists are willing to take in Canada, or Canadian banks are willing to take on companies. Whereas in San Francisco, you have these absurd unicorns, as they're called, which are able to get the valuation of $1 billion.
Well, the joke goes: you go into a bar, you'll meet a VC.
Yeah,
right? It's a San Fran mentality.
Yeah, and we have to be able to build that here first before we can get to the point where we can build the so-called next Google. Yeah. Right? I mean, it's not going to be the Google. Google's too big to compete against. But, building the next best thing, we need to create the conditions necessary to allow for that. And for that, we need talent, and we need money, and we need a devil-may-care attitude towards that money.
Especially because now we have companies like Shopify and OpenText that are allowing... Oh, sorry. My laptop's just... acting up, that are allowing the Canadian, tech side of things to prosper. And in Shopify specifically, we've seen them sort of change the game when it comes to e-commerce and it really sort of allowing to push that brand to other mechanisms when it comes to content production, and even now just having event spaces in the city of Toronto. What would be your recommendation to really sort of foster this development, or even just ignite some of these current tech workers that maybe are working for companies here in the Canadian space, to take chances and to really think about having that goal in mind, to maybe even creating a potential multinational like an Amazon to really thrive in the Canadian market?
Look, I think we do have the people that do want to take chances, right? When you look at a lot of startups premised out of Toronto, they're solving real problems. Yeah. A lot of those startups, for example, premised around University Avenue, they're like health tech firms. Yeah. For example, with health tech, you have a completely different issue where you have to deal with a government-run or a government-run healthcare system, right? So you have to work with that bureaucracy. So it's a bit tougher to get adoption for new technologies, unlike in the U.S., where it's easier to actually develop your health tech, around Mars and then sell it in the U.S. Yeah. Right. So that's a situation that they're facing. So that's one way where we can allow innovation. Maybe we can make it so that the government kind of avidly partners with these firms. Same goes for a lot of other industries. At the end of the day, it's a matter of the existing industry plus technology, plus software, and how software can automate things, right? And we need to be able to be a space that allows that to happen. We have the talent. We have fantastic universities that are pumping out this talent, and what we really just need is the money. Right? The money to allow that to happen.
Exactly. Wasim?
I wonder, almost, once again, I couldn't disagree. I couldn't agree more with what Sushil said. Wow, I couldn't disagree more with you. No, I couldn't agree more with what Sushil said. And I do think sometimes in Canada we are burdened by excessive regulation. But I also wonder if we could maybe put a different spin on this, in the sense that our definitions of success for our companies over here, as Sushil rightly pointed out, there's some companies, some startups that are doing some fantastic work in
Totally.
Toronto. I know, being an alumni of Waterloo myself, though not in the tech space, political science, but still, I do take pride in a lot of the stuff that comes out of that city, the incubators over there and stuff. It doesn't necessarily, we don't necessarily have to define our success by being the next, $5 billion valued company like an Apple or an Amazon or a Google for that matter.
Yeah.
Right. I think we've seen amazing examples of success. Something like Ubisoft, BioShock, Assassin's Creed, these are all made in Canada.
Totally,
That's something to be celebrated.
like
Telmake,
Rockstar
Oculus.
So a lot of
Yeah.
and actually a lot of those organizations, they've the McGuinty government avidly was trying to court them, right? So Ubisoft was regarded as like a McGuinty government success, right?
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I
That's
mean, a lot
good.
of the tech scene in Toronto that you see today, a lot of the attraction of that money into Toronto and into Ontario, there was a sort of purposeful government policy to get that to happen. And you can see the federal government is following suit, except with AI and in Canada. And if we really want to, for a small country like us, 36 million people, we need something that provides us scale, right? And honestly, the best tool for that is the government, right? The government brings us scale. The government can at least help partner and provide funding on the side. Now, obviously, there are some issues that can arise from that because the government, as a once you're attached to like a government bureaucracy, it can sanitize and sterilize a lot of the good stuff that can happen through an innovation economy. So there has to be some level of arm's length distance between the two, but there is a benefit to having the government play a prominent role in trying to attract and even like create the conditions necessary for this. We're not going to be like Silicon Valley, right? Silicon Valley, California is already 30 million. They are the population of Canada, right? Their economy is the size of Canada, right? So we need for ourselves, we need the federal government to kind of step in and play that sort of role in creating conditions necessary.
Switching gears a little bit, I do want to talk about the city of Toronto and an interesting development that's taking place. The sort of the Waterfront Toronto project, with Sidewalk Labs, regarding sort of making that that entire area smart designated, so it's like completely connected. A lot of controversy with this current project. I'm seeing articles around privacy and just whether or not it's going to be beneficial to people living in a specific area. Sushil, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this project? Because I've seen a lot of people on LinkedIn, share some mixed reviews as to whether or not this should be happening, and is this disruption at its finest when it comes to making smart communities and allowing technology to play that big of a role?
I'm always a bit concerned on principle about top-down central planning, right? And it doesn't matter if it's the government coming in and saying, oh, this entire chunk of land is going to be planned and it's going to be this beautiful utopia, or if it's private business that does the same thing. Yeah. Right. A lot of the issues with Sidewalk Labs are, I would say, kind of, in some sense, overblown because this is. They were last year. They wanted to actually create a proposal. Yeah. Right, that's what the declaration was about. That's what the announcement was about, and they have a proposal now. Right, so for us, I guess it's a matter of looking at the proposal and looking at what their approach is going to be. Right, because if it's Google, or not Google, but if it's Sidewalk Labs, and they're, for example, going to be building every building in that vast neighborhood, then there's a bit of a problem here. Yeah. But if opportunity is given for local developers or local businesses to set up areas of their own, right? Then we have ourselves something interesting.
So saying right now, it's the privatization is what.
Yeah. So if
causing the issue.
Sure, we're essentially contracting out to Sidewalk Labs the sort of smart infrastructure that would go in this neighborhood, and I think we can look piece by piece and critique or try to figure out better ways of doing it. But at the end of the day, Toronto isn't really known as a city to take risks. It doesn't like taking risks. It doesn't like the rail deck park idea. It doesn't like the idea of tearing down the Gardiner. It doesn't like the idea of, changing the way we zone things. It doesn't like the idea of becoming a big city, and people are fighting this, constantly. So it's very conservative, right? Doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right.
Yeah.
The attitude is a very conservative. No, let's not do this sort of deal. So I don't know whether a lot of the criticism against Sidewalk Labs is premised on that. If it is, then I would be critical of that attitude. But there are still, I think, important, criticisms that could exist about Sidewalk Labs.
Wasim?
I could just listen to this guy.
That's why I brought him on.
He's got all his bases. He's got all the bases covered. I was just intrigued to maybe get your perspectives on it. When we talk about smart infrastructure, it's really interesting that as more and more people are getting aware of this, I feel like maybe in most aspects of life, I almost feel like the true essence of it is being missed out on, because without local voices, without residents actively playing a part in smart infrastructure, I don't know how to ask this. Is it even smart infrastructure if the people who are most impacted by it are actually not a part of the decision?
So are you almost saying that, should sort of the people that are living in the area, should their ideas be considered?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting you mentioned that, because I went to Singapore last year, and dude, there's a lot of smart enabled infrastructure pieces in that entire area. I saw a self-driving bus as an example, right? And I remember reading about the fact that, for that smart driving bus, when they came up with the route, it was really based on users and just what the most busiest routes were, and just what would ease up traffic as well, and that was something that became a huge benefit for the people that were actually living there. So it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think that piece is very important, because when you think about tech innovation, a lot of the times, a lot of the biggest ideas come about because they're trying to solve some type of problem. Are we able to identify what the key problem is here that this smart community will identify, or is this more of just something really cool and, think, to your point, a utopia?
I think, yeah. I think, once again, as long as any sort of company decides that they can build a utopia, or any organization thinks they can build a utopia, we've already failed.
This is so true.
Because
this is so true.
Because no one, committee or central planner knows or understands human nature, and that was the core criticism that Jane Jacobs brought forth, in her book Life and Death of Great American Cities, and so there's always been this sort of fight between the local, right, small scale decentralized approach to city building, and this large scale, top down, give off this chunk of land to a developer, or zone this as a city, or the city build something big, that sort of approach, right? And the best we can hope for is we got to make sure that Sidewalk Labs isn't making the utopian type of decisions, and instead, it's approaching this in terms of, here is smart infrastructure that can collect data, right, about people going through a neighborhood, and and Google actually is, Alphabet, but particularly Google has been particularly good with providing, these things called APIs, right? So the API, application programming interface, it allows, third-party software developers to access Google's platforms.
So for the layman like me, nowadays when we sign up on websites and stuff, and it says sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook,
exactly.
That's
it's like cookies,
that's an API.
Right?
That taps in with the API, right? Now, I think if we bring the same approach to city building, and even if it's a private company like Sidewalk Labs doing it, if we as regular citizens can tap into that data,
100%.
Right? And at least there being like a free tier, right, that lets us do that and makes this accessible to everyone, then you know what? That's a good thing, right? But if Google is planning which condo goes where, where's, if Sidewalk Lab starts, plotting things and acting as if this is SimCity, right? Or this is like some sort of Minecraft server where they're like creating this centralized, city,
Minecraft,
right? Then we have ourselves a problem, because, once you've created this big thing and then you present it to the people, and the people are like, well, that's not what I want to do with this piece of land. Right. then you've effectively kind of choked out, the best uses of that land, right? And that's why we need to take a decentralized approach, because it's better to build a small building, right, with, shop front or something, and then if nobody wants to use it, you can tear down the small building, rather than building a huge building and then nobody wants to use it, and then it has to get torn down or retrofit into something else, right? Like, we don't want to destroy the land, like destroy our land that way, right? Because that's what it is when you get utopian and big vision top-down planning.
Totally. It's kind of like the Powerade Center,
the
CA Center.
Yeah, like you look throughout suburbia, look throughout the GTA, and you'll see that, right? You'll see, huge plans, and then they go empty and unused.
I want to end things off on a bit of a lighter note. It's no secret, especially with how the weather looks outside. We're officially into the holiday season. There's snow on the ground. If you go to your local mall, so in this case, Wasim, for you, it's Square One, or Sushil, for you, it's Brown Bay City Center, you hear a lot of holiday music, a lot of holiday imagery. But if you're like me, and
is that like semi-judgmental though? Like, just because of where we live, we go to those malls?
I've never been to Brown Bay City Center.
Oh yeah, if you haven't, okay. So Shoppers World,
it's been 2
Shoppers World.
Actually, I have been to Shoppers World.
Okay, fine. Shoppers World and Air Mills. But it's fascinating because I feel like normally as soon as Halloween is done, we get into the Christmas spirit. But I don't know about you guys, but I was seeing Christmas stuff like in the stores like end of September. Like, it was nuts this year. And working in different marketing organizations in the past, I sort of understand the logic behind shipping out Christmas products so you have it in time for the stores. But now it seems like it's just entering the stores early. And then this weekend we have the start of the Toronto Christmas market, and then I know the city of Brampton's doing a big holiday get together amongst the entire city with a tree lighting ceremony, and I'm sure Mississauga has something coming up as well. So just want to do a quick round table and just get your thoughts on sort of the consumerism that exists with Christmas, and are things in your mind, are they starting early, and how does that really make you feel? And we'll begin with you.
Hey, you just remind me of Randy, eh?
Randy who?
Randy Prasad.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Why?
By calling a not round table a round table. Because that's what he used to do always.
Shout outs to Randy Prasad.
Well, honestly, man, look, I moved to Canada when I was 18. So from my perspective, I honestly haven't grown up in a culture where Christmas is part of a cherished childhood and stuff. So I can only speak from my vantage.
Yeah.
And from my vantage, like right from the get-go, it's always seemed to me to be a very commercial celebration.
Totally.
Yes, there are moments, people have their family dinners on Christmas Eve, or some of them have them on Christmas night, and you'll have your office Christmas parties and stuff. But compared to, and I don't say this out of any superiority for other cultures and stuff, but compared to a lot of Eastern cultures and Eastern religions, where our celebrations often have a deep spiritual element to it, along with the family stuff. And of course, the world is changing. Don't get me wrong. Commercialism is driving up in other parts of the world.
Well, even like Diwali, right? Diwali is becoming a big commercialized holiday
and
now.
It's the same for Eid and everything. There's always that. But still, the essence, at least, is not purely driven by that. Now, from my vantage point, when I came to Canada, nothing about Christmas has ever screamed or said Christianity to me. So for me, it's always been totally artificial. It's been when gifts are such a big part. And I'm maybe venturing into controversial territory. Episode 0, there's a bonus for that. I don't look at Diwali and Eid and Holi and all identified by gifts. For me, the thing that signifies Christmas more than anything else is gifts. Do I enjoy that Christmas spirit? Honestly, I still do. So maybe there's a bit of a contradiction over there. But the commercialism, to me at least, has always been a part of it.
Well, like my problem with it, and again, this is just harking back to my experience working in marketing for consumer packaged goods companies, is I find that we now don't let occasions breathe. Like, we're so caught up in like moving the needle on getting people in the Christmas spirit, getting people in the pumpkin spice latte spirit by now pushing that out to August. Like, my biggest dilemma with that is, are we getting to a point where a lot of these things are just going to be everyday sort of nuances that we sort of deal with, and do they lose that specialness that typically exists with like an occasion like Christmas? Because my family doesn't really celebrate it, but we do use Christmas as a way to get everybody together. So now
For
every
sure.
year,
It's holidays.
yeah,
right?
it's holidays, and now every year,
convenient,
you know,
yeah.
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, like you know,
Yeah.
my wife and I will stay at my parents' place, and you know, we'll have dinner
Yeah.
and hang out there.
Yeah.
But what's the show? What are your thoughts?
I'm all down for the commercialism.
Yeah,
I
there you
mean,
go.
like,
Love it.
I'm not a fan of, you know, walking into Fortino's and then having Christmas music blared at me.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I'm just not a fan of having music blared at me in stores anyway, at least at the pace they are. Like, in some cases, it's like, please get out is what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah.
Right? And, I mean, for a grocery store, I don't think you want to do that.
Yeah.
But no, I honestly don't mind. When you look at the commercial is like, you know, the commercialization of holidays happening, you know, outside of the Western world now, I would actually see that as, you know, not necessarily trying to copy, you know, copy the West
Yeah.
so much as there's a growing middle class.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so
Growing
true.
middle
Totally.
class,
That's very
Totally.
they have money.
Yeah.
You know, they don't need to make their own homemade, you know, divas, for example,
Yeah.
for Diwali, right?
Yeah.
You can get one from the store.
Yeah.
This is what it means. And so I think it's a good thing, right? Commercialism is for the most part it just means that there is a middle class and they have expendable income and they can spend that money. And in terms of Canada, right, when I see like, say, a commercialization of, say, Diwali, I love it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know,
Because it's also a tool for awareness, right?
It is.
for
It
awareness,
is.
but it's also like a signal that, hey, you are accepted.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it means to me.
Yeah, it's definitely more inclusive, and even
Yeah.
you know, I was talking to my wife about this last week, and even at work now, like she had people wishing her happy Diwali,
Yeah.
and these are non-Indian people, but
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
just they're
That's
more
amazing.
they're
It's
more aware.
because-
Yeah.
And even like we have a group chat with you
Yeah.
know two other couples that we hang out with, and none of them
Yeah.
are Indian, and they
Yeah.
said the same thing. And you know,
Yeah.
some of the bit emojis got a little creative, and they had happy Diwali bit emojis as well.
Yeah.
So you know, to your point, Sushil, I'm definitely in agreement to the fact that I like the awareness piece of it.
Yeah.
My only dilemma is I just would like the holidays to breathe in their own areas.
I see your point.
I think that's a
think-
fair
yeah
statement to make.
Yeah, I think I kind of see your point because even to be honest, I do like and maybe today for the first time I'm properly deferring with Sushil. My wife and I actually do
Finally.
my wife and I, when we go to the malls in November and December, we actually do like the Christmas music.
Yeah.
We like the feel.
It does.
And maybe it's a big psychological experiment or something.
I think it is.
There's
I think they're-
subliminal messaging and
Yeah.
stuff, but I actually think there is an element of happiness and stuff, which I think we sort of do enjoy. I do see a point that maybe starting it the moment Halloween's over, looking forward to Christmas, maybe that's a bit much. 55 days.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
before Remembrance Day.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
well, my thing is, especially
Yeah.
now that Canada's inhabited Black Friday, you know, that's our new Boxing Day. Like people just love doing Black Friday deals now.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with after Black Friday, it's full out Christmas.
I just wanted to, on that note, I just wanted to quickly take a tangent and let you know that I don't want the new MacBooks. You can get me the new iPad.
Oh yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Well, I already
Yeah.
bought you the MacBook, so
Oh,
now I guess I
man.
gotta return it.
Yeah.
But guys, I wanted to thank you again for joining me on this.
I'm sorry, I
episode.
didn't mean you to cut off your point completely.
No, I don't even remember what I was going to say. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
There's always
yeah.
other shows for that.
Yeah,
but,
banter, man. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beauty of banter.
but you know, I'm
right?
gonna. If you guys are okay with this, like, I think I want to make this like a recurring sort of cast, like every
Yeah,
couple
man.
of weeks. I like the
Absolutely,
dynamic
man.
here, especially something
Yeah.
big happens in the political world, and
Yeah.
or
Down
even
to
in,
be here.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
even
You
even
just
in
have,
tech.
two liberal-minded folks. Just,
So
we'll have a wonderful echo
And,
chamber.
and
here.
it's
Yeah.
a conservative or here to,
Yeah.
to straighten you guys out. But,
Hey, this is like, if you think about it, this is like Bollywood utopia, man, you know?
Yeah.
Like, a Sikh, Hindu, and a Muslim.
That is perfect. Actually.
yeah, and
know,
we
this
This
all-
is like the
makes over,
ultimate
yeah.
rebuke against
Yeah.
the BJP.
and we're all
Exactly.
agreeing.
Yeah, Modi would not like this.
Oh, well, on that note, This is going to conclude the inaugural episode 0 of New Theory Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you to Wasim, Mr. Sushil, for joining us. Where can the listeners, who I'm hoping we at least get one out of this, where can they learn more or reach out to you if they want to chat further on any of the topics or anything else? Wasim, are you?
You know what? I'm gonna build my audience before my next appearance,
okay, fine.
And then I'll let you know.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Because I know Wasim's working on that. He's working on the personal brand right now. So,
Yeah.
if they want to get in touch with you, well, every Wednesday, right? The Bramptonist podcast.
Yeah, there's the Bramptonist podcast. But for me, it's just sushil.tailor@gmail.com.
Awesome.
Tailor is spelled Tailor. It's not.
You got to give a shout to that memes page, man. I'm a fan. I saw it today
page?
for the memes.
Oh,
memes.
yeah, those are secret pages.
Okay, all right.
No, not really. It's like an open secret, but those are not the pages I care about.
So we can cut that one out. Sure. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in, and I guess we will see you, all of you, or you will hear us all next time. Thank you very much.
Yep.
At American University, we don't just hope for change, we create it. We don't just dream of a better world, we make it a reality. With a graduate degree from AU, you'll access expert faculty and connections throughout DC to develop skills and experience to turn your passion into purpose. And that purpose can make all the difference in your career. Discover the difference a degree makes at american.edu/grad school. At American University, we don't just hope for change, we create it. We don't just dream of a better world, we make it a reality. With a graduate degree from AU, you'll access expert faculty and connections throughout DC to develop skills and experience to turn your passion into purpose. And that purpose can make all the difference in your career. Discover the difference a degree makes at american.edu/grad school.